This ad is not going to win any awards for subtlety.
That has all of the pieces of a very good ad in the wrong order.
Welcome to Political Experts React, where we break down political ads in media, explain what the people behind them are trying to accomplish, and decide whether or not they did a good job. I'm Dan Pfeiffer, former communications director for Barack Obama, and joining me today is messaging and communications expert Anat Shenker-Osorio, the founder of ASO Communications and host of the podcast Words to Win By. Anat, welcome back to Political Experts React. Today's episode, we're going to focus on education, something the Republicans have said is going to be a core of their 2022 message. How are you?
Well, I'm just living the dream here. Everything's going great.
That is what I imagine the message of Joe Biden's State of the Union will be. Perfect.
I hope not.
This will come out after that, so we'll know the answer to that. The first ad we're going to watch is from Dave White, a Republican running for governor in the critical battleground state of Pennsylvania.
This young girl is a racist. So is he. And all of them born racist. The radical left calls this critical race theory. It claims America is systemically racist and demand this be taught to our children.
Not when I'm governor. I'm Dave White, and I'll never let CRT be taught in our classrooms. I believe the best way to unite and inspire all of our kids is to teach them about all that is great about America.
This ad is not going to win any awards for subtlety, but what's your analysis of it?
Sorry, it was hard for me not to laugh out loud at the pronunciation of America. My analysis of that is it is a straight shot, over the top intent to upset, evoke emotion, and cast himself as, of course, the conquering hero that is going to stop this horribleness from coming to Pennsylvania.
I mean, there are a couple hints that this is a Republican primary ad. The first just being the lack of subtlety. There is no points for subtlety in a Republican primary in the Trump and post-Trump, if whatever we call it, era that we are currently in. But also the other hint in there as a Republican ad is the use of the acronym CRT, which is something that is familiar only to people who consume right-wing media in that context. And I use critical race theory in the broadest terms possible to refer to all correct renderings of history, not the very specific, esoteric, legal philosophy that is critical race theory, but just the idea that we're going to teach people about racism. As the Republicans have attempted to sort of do a little bit of jujitsu here and say that your kid is racist. And what's your analysis of that, like a more subtle version of that message, perhaps?
Their strongest inroad around this is actually an argument, interestingly, that they've chosen not to make, which is parental choice. Those kinds of arguably more subtle inroads are actually more persuasive. So, as you said, this lives, screams, eats, breathes primary, and it really is about kind of Todd Akening him to the most extremist position that one could have on this topic.
Fair enough. The next ad we're going to watch is from a Republican group called the State Government Leadership Foundation.
The Emmy goes to...
Everybody log into today's lesson.
All right, does anybody have any questions?
This is an ad that scared the living daylights out of me when I saw it for the first time. What's your take on it?
Yeah, so when we were doing research years and years ago around public education, this was in the pre-COVID era, and what we found over and over again, unsurprisingly in focus groups, is that parents actually care how kids feel at the present moment. And that might just be because if your kid hates school, then your life is a pain in the ass. And so this embrace of being on the side of joy and childhood and the present moment, I mean, that's terrifyingly genius. Yes.
The pandemic has caused, I think, everyone to reckon with the fact that education in this country is our national childcare system. It's what allows our economy to function. And even the most COVID conscious, masked, vaxxed, boosted parents in the world are conflicted about how this is all played out in their children's lives. The challenges of remote learning, mental health, not seeing friends. And Republicans, I think, had obviously some real success in weaponizing the anger about this in 2 states run by Democrats, Virginia and New Jersey in 2021. So this is very, very powerful. The question I've always had is how powerful would it be if things feel more normal for a few months before people vote next year?
When will Democrats, when will progressives, when will folks on our side of this debate recover our own voice and go on offense here and remind voters that Republicans at every level of government have been presiding over and in charge of the utter decimation of the public school system? You know, school is a place that childhood happens, and we need one lesson to stick, and it's love of learning. And for that to happen, that means your kid needs an art class. They need classroom aids. They need an outdoor space where they have room to roam and room to play with a curriculum that is up to date and teaches the good and bad of our history. And that is what Democrats want. There is absolutely a proactive message here. It just doesn't appear to be in popular discourse.
It's really interesting because for a very long time, if the focus of an election was on education, that is an issue that Democrats almost always are more trusted on than Republicans, whether it's proposals to eliminate the Department of Education during the Gingrich era, Tea Party Republicans, even just Rick Scott, the senator from Florida who put out his own Republican Senate agenda suggesting massive cuts for education. Like, this is the place where we should be on offense. There is all this focus on, quote unquote, critical race theory or what's being taught about race and history. And then at this exact same moment that is happening all across the country in Republican states, you have people banning books. You would think that we would seize this as an opportunity to regain offense on an issue that should be ours, and that is not happening. We got a new producer named Ben working on the show. Ben's got a lot of ideas about all the new things we have to do. I'm pretty excited. We can try some new ads, try some new things. But once again, Elijah is ruining all the fun, and we have to do the same old stuff we always do, which requires me to once again, very, very sincerely plead with you to smash the subscribe button. I can't tell you how much I care about how many people subscribe to the Crooked Media YouTube channel. It is my passion, or so Elijah says. The next ad we're going to watch is from John King, who served as President Barack Obama's Secretary of Education and is now running for governor of Maryland.
School curricula have become openly racist.
Critical race theory is bigoted. It is a lie.
Some far-right politicians want to erase my story. The truth is, my ancestors who were enslaved in this cabin in Gaithersburg, Maryland, were part of building this country. The truth is, today's gaps in health, wealth, and criminal justice are tied to the history of slavery, segregation, and redlining. And the truth is, my family went from being enslaved in that cabin to serving in the cabinet of our nation's first Black president. As a teacher, school principal, and President Obama's Secretary of Education, I know the truth matters. We're strong enough to acknowledge injustice and see the power of progress. I know that Maryland's future depends on the strength of our public schools. It was amazing teachers who saved my life when both of my parents passed away. It couldn't be a better time to have an educator as governor, and that's our truth.
And for some context for our viewers, John King is running in a primary, and it is assumed but not presumed that the winner of that primary will be the overwhelming favorite to be the next governor of Maryland. What did you think of this ad as a form of offense in this new discourse around education?
That has all of the pieces of a very good ad in the wrong order.
Oh, interesting. I'd like to hear why.
So that ad opens with a recitation of the opposition. That is a bad idea. The recitation of the opposition is an important thing to do. It needs to be sandwiched in between what we stand for. Where it should have begun is with the line that he used about himself, which was, roughly speaking, not verbatim, as an educator, as former education secretary, I know the truth. So you begin there with his unique perspective, his understanding, and then you introduce the villains as a counterpoint to that, thereby making the bad things that they're doing all the more terrible because it is held up against the contrast with the desirable thing that the candidate is doing and saying.
So for all of the Democrats who are not yet running aggressive advertising pushes. What does the strongest Democratic message on education look like in the context of the political environment Republicans have created with their massive media megaphone?
Yeah, so it's first and foremost stating what the vast majority of American voters believe, which is that they actually do want kids to be taught the truth, quote, the good and bad of our history. So in a messaging form, what that sounds like is most of us want our kids to be taught the truth about our past so they can understand our present and create a better future. But today, my opponent, but today, name the person, but today, certain Republicans want to spread lies. They seek to ban books, but we know better. We know our kids are courageous enough to learn both the good and bad of our history, and that they deserve fully funded schools that are places that we would want any of our children to learn. So that's not copy edited, but basically you say the kind of education that you actually do want, and then you portray them as the contrast, but you make sure that you ascribe motivation. So you don't just say what they are saying, but you give the underlying reason why. And that underlying reason is that they know they don't have an education agenda. They know that their education agenda, quote unquote, is to take everything that our public schools need and to harm our kids in the process. And they're hoping to cover for it.
Well, Democratic campaigns, Anat just did the work for you. Take it, snip this, get some good visuals, some B-roll footage, and let's make it happen. Anat, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Political Experts React. This was enlightening as always from you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for watching these ads and videos with us. If you have anything you'd like us to break down next time, let us know in the comments.